They treated me like a servant at the family Christmas. So I revealed who really owns their house. I never thought my own family, the people I loved, supported, and sacrificed for, could make me feel so invisible. But as I watched them laughing and celebrating, barely noticing me refilling their glasses and cleaning up their mess, something inside me shifted. My name is Evelyn Carter, and I'm not just the grandmother in the corner or the woman who pays the bills. No, I'm more than the helper they think I am. It's funny how people show their true colors when they think you have nothing left to give. I've learned to sit quietly, to listen, to watch. But today, everything changes. Where are you watching from? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories like mine. Now, let me take you back to the beginning, to the day I truly saw my family for who they were, and decided it was time they saw me too. "Mom, where's the gravy boat?" David called from the dining room, his voice carrying that familiar tone of impatience. I wiped my hands on my apron and reached into the china cabinet. "Coming, dear," I replied, though he'd already moved on to another conversation with his wife, Sarah. The house buzzed with the chaos of Christmas morning. 23 people crowded into what used to feel like a spacious home. My children, David, Rebecca, and Michael, had arrived with their families, filling every corner with noise and expectation. "Evelyn, this turkey is a bit dry," Sarah announced, as I set the gravy boat on the table. "Maybe next time you could baste it more often." "I'll remember that," I said quietly, returning to the kitchen where the mountain of dishes waited. Rebecca appeared in the doorway, her arms crossed. "Mom, Emily spilled juice on the carpet. Do you have any club soda?" "Under the sink," I replied, not looking up from the pot I was scrubbing. "Could you get it? I'm trying to keep an eye on the other kids." I dried my hands and retrieved the club soda, following Rebecca to the living room where my youngest granddaughter sat crying beside, a red stain on my cream carpet. "It's okay, sweetheart." I knelt beside Emily, dabbing at the stain. "Accidents happen." "Sorry, Grandma," Emily whispered, her eyes wide with worry. "Nothing to be sorry for, dear one." Michael wandered over, beer in hand. "Hey, Mom. When's dessert?" "The game starts in an hour." "Soon," I replied, still working on the stain. The doorbell rang and I started to get up, but David was already at the door. "Linda, come on in. Mom didn't mention you were stopping by." My neighbor, Linda Matthews, stood in the doorway with a covered dish, her kind eyes finding mine across the room. "I brought my famous apple pie. Thought you might need backup dessert with this crowd." "That's so thoughtful," I said, rising to greet her properly. "Evelyn works so hard," Linda said to David, her voice carrying a subtle edge. "You're lucky to have such a devoted mother." David nodded absently, already turning back to his conversation with Tom, Rebecca's husband. In the kitchen, Linda helped me arrange dessert plates. "How are you holding up?" she asked quietly. "I'm fine," I replied automatically. "Evelyn." Linda's voice was gentle but firm. "You've been running yourself ragged all morning while they sit around expecting to be served." "They're family," I said, avoiding her eyes. "Family should help each other, not just take." Before I could respond, Sarah's voice cut through the air. "Evelyn, the coffee pot isn't working." I excused myself and went to deal with the coffee situation, Linda following with a knowing look. The afternoon wore on with me moving from kitchen to dining room to living room, refilling drinks, clearing plates, and managing the endless stream of requests. My feet ached and my back protested, but I kept going. "Mom, do you have any antacid?" Michael asked during dessert. "I think I ate too much," Bathroom medicine cabinet, I replied, cutting another slice of Linda's pie. Could you grab it? I don't want to dig through your stuff. I sighed and went upstairs, my knees protesting with each step. When I returned with the antacid, Michael was deep in conversation with David about some business opportunity. Thanks, he said without looking up, taking the tablets from my hand. As the day wound down, I found myself alone in the kitchen again, washing the endless parade of dishes. Through the doorway, I could see my family gathered in the living room, sharing stories and laughing. The warm glow of the Christmas tree cast long shadows, and for a moment I felt like I was watching strangers. Here, let me help. Emily appeared at my side with a dish towel. That's sweet of you, honey, but you should be with the family. Your family too, Grandma. Her simple words hit me harder than I expected. I blinked back sudden tears and handed her a plate to dry. Why do you do all the work? Emily asked, her 10-year-old directness catching me off guard. Because that's what mothers do, I replied, though the words felt hollow. But you're not their mother anymore. They're grown-ups. I paused, really looking at this wise little girl. You're right, sweetheart. They are grown-ups. Later that evening, after everyone had gone home and Linda had insisted on helping me finish the dishes, I sat alone in my living room. The silence felt heavy after the day's chaos. I stared at the family photos on the mantel. Graduations, weddings, birthdays, all the moments I'd orchestrated and funded while staying carefully in the background. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. Thanks for everything today, Mom. The food was great, despite the turkey being a little dry. Despite. Even her gratitude came with criticism. I set the phone aside and walked to the window, looking out at the quiet street. Linda's porch light was still on, a warm beacon in the darkness. She'd been right about one thing. I deserved better than this. But what could I do? They were my children, my family. This was just how things were. Or was it? For the first time, in years, I allowed myself to imagine what it would feel like to be treated with genuine respect and appreciation. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. Change seemed impossible. But as I turned off the lights and headed upstairs, Emily's words echoed in my mind. They're grown-ups. Yes, they were. And maybe it was time I started treating them like it. The next morning brought no reprieve. My phone rang at 7:30 with Sarah's demanding voice. Evelyn, I left Emily's sweater at your house yesterday. Could you drop it off? We're leaving for the mountains this afternoon. Of course, I replied, though the thought of driving across town made my tired bones ache. Great. Also, could you pick up some groceries for us? I'll text you a list. We won't have time before we leave. The line went dead before I could respond. Within minutes, my phone chimed with a grocery list longer than my arm. I dressed slowly, my body protesting after yesterday's marathon of cooking and cleaning. The grocery store was crowded with post-Christmas shoppers, and I found myself pushing the cart through endless aisles, checking items off Sarah's list. At the checkout, the total made me wince. $67 for groceries I wouldn't even eat. But I handed over my credit card without complaint, just as I always did. David's house sat in an upscale neighborhood that my monthly Social Security barely allowed me to visit. I rang the doorbell, arms full of grocery bags. Mom! David opened the door with surprise. You didn't have to bring all this up. I could have gotten it from the car. It's fine, I replied. Though my shoulders screamed in protest, Sarah appeared, already in her ski jacket. Oh, good. You found everything. Did you get the organic yogurt? Emily won't eat the regular kind. Yes, it's in the bag with the blue label. Perfect. Sarah took the bags without offering to help. Carry them to the kitchen. You're a lifesaver, Evelyn. I followed them inside, where Emily was sitting on the couch with her suitcase. Grandma! She jumped up and hugged me tight. Thank you for bringing my sweater. You're welcome, sweetheart. David was loading the car when his phone rang. I couldn't help but overhear his conversation from the kitchen. Yeah, the house. Appraisal should be done next week, he said. Once we get Mom settled somewhere smaller, we can list it in the spring. The market's hot right now. My blood turned to ice. I stood perfectly still, straining to hear more. No, she doesn't know, yet. We wanted to wait until after Christmas. Rebecca thinks we should look at that assisted living place on Maple Street. Sarah's voice drifted from the living room. It would be so much easier for everyone. She's getting too old to manage that big house anyway. I felt like I'd been slapped. They were planning my life without me, discussing my future like I was a problem, to be solved rather than a person with her own will. Ready to go? David returned, pocketing his phone. I managed a smile and hugged Emily goodbye, my heart hammering against my ribs. The drive home passed in a blur. I kept replaying their words. Get Mom settled somewhere smaller. She doesn't know yet. Too old to manage. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car for a long moment, staring at the house I'd called home for 35 years. The house where I'd raised my children, nursed my dying husband, and built countless memories. The house they wanted to sell from under me. Inside, I made myself a cup of tea with shaking hands and sat at the kitchen table where I'd fed 3 growing children, breakfast every morning for 20 years. The silence felt different now. Not peaceful, but ominous. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. Had a great idea. That new assisted living place on Maple has a waiting list, but I know someone who works there. Should I put your name down, just in case? Just in case, as if my moving was inevitable. I stared at the message for a long time before typing back. Let me think about it. But I wasn't thinking about moving. I was thinking about the conversation I'd overheard, about the years I'd spent putting their needs before my own, about the way they dismissed me yesterday, like hired help. I was thinking about the deed to this house, safely locked in my filing cabinet upstairs. The deed that bore only my name, thanks to my late husband's insistence on protecting me. I was thinking that maybe it was time my children learned exactly who they were dealing with. The phone rang again. This time it was Michael. Hey, Mom, weird question. Do you have any of those financial papers Dad used to keep? I need to know. About the house insurance for tax purposes. What kind of papers? I asked carefully. You know, deed, mortgage stuff. I figured you'd have them somewhere. Why do you need them? Oh, just planning ahead. David mentioned you might want to downsize eventually, so I thought I'd help research the paperwork. Research the paperwork. Help with downsizing. They were already dividing up my life like I was dead and buried. I'll look for them, I said, though I knew exactly where they were. After I hung up, I climbed the stairs to my bedroom and opened the filing cabinet. There it was. The deed with my name alone, the insurance papers, the will that left everything to my children, but only after my death. They thought they knew what they were dealing with. They thought I was just a tired old woman who'd roll over and let them make decisions for me. They were about to learn otherwise. I picked up my phone and dialed Linda's number. Linda, it's Evelyn. Do you have time to talk? I think I need some advice. For the first time in months, I felt something other than resignation. I felt angry, and anger I was beginning to realize might be exactly what I needed. "They what?" Linda's voice rose with indignation as we sat in her cozy living room the next morning. "They're planning to sell my house," I repeated, wrapping my hands around my coffee mug. "David was on the phone about appraisals. Sarah mentioned assisted living. They've already decided my future." "Without even talking to you?" Linda shook her head. "Evelyn, that's not just disrespectful. It's cruel. I don't know what to do," I admitted. "Part of me wonders if they're right. Maybe I am too old for that big house." "Stop right there." Linda leaned forward, her eyes blazing. "You're 65, not 95. You take care of that house perfectly well. More importantly, it's your house." "Technically, yes, but—" "No but. It's your house, period." Linda paused, studying my face. "They don't know that, do they?" I shook my head. "Robert insisted on putting only my name on the deed when we refinanced 15 years ago. He said it was to protect me if anything happened to him." "Smart man. What else don't they know?" I thought about it carefully. "A lot, actually. They think the house still has a mortgage. They don't know about the life insurance money that paid it off. They don't know about my savings account or the investments Robert left me. Why haven't you told them? I didn't want them to worry about money. And honestly, I like that. They called me, visited me, needed me for something." My voice dropped. "I was afraid if they knew I was financially independent, they'd stop coming around altogether." Linda reached over and squeezed my hand. "Oh, honey, you shouldn't have to buy their love with silence about your own security. I know that now." I sipped my coffee, gathering courage. "Linda, I found some things when I was going through Robert's papers last night. Things my children don't know about." "What kind of things?" I pulled out a manila folder I'd brought with me. "David's been borrowing money from his business account to cover personal expenses. He doesn't know I co-signed the original business loan, so I get copies of all the statements." Linda's eyebrows rose. "How much?" $30,000 over the past 2 years. And Rebecca." I flipped through more papers. She applied for a loan using my house as collateral, without asking me. I only found out because the bank called to verify. "She what?" "The loan was denied because my name wasn't on the application, but she tried. She actually tried to use my house to secure money for her business venture." Linda sat back, stunned. "Evelyn, this is beyond disrespect. This is financial manipulation. And Michael—" I pulled out the last set of papers. "He's been using my credit card for his online purchases. Small amounts, but it adds up. He has the account information from when I let him order Christmas presents last year." "They're stealing from you." The word hit me like a physical blow. "I wouldn't call it stealing." "What would you call it then? Taking money without permission, using your property as collateral without consent, planning to sell your house without your input." Linda's voice was firm but gentle. "Evelyn, you're being financially abused by your own children." I felt tears prick my eyes. "I raised them better than this." "You raised them to be independent adults. They're choosing to take advantage of your generosity and your silence." We sat quietly for a moment, the weight of the situation settling between us. "What am I supposed to do?" I asked finally. "They're still my children." "Yes, they are. And as their mother, it's your job to teach them that their behavior is unacceptable." Linda stood and walked to her bookshelf, returning with a business card. This is my lawyer. He helped me when my ex-husband tried to hide assets during our divorce. He's good at protecting people who've been taken advantage of." I took the card, reading the name. Harrison and Associates, Family Law. "I can't afford." "Evelyn," Linda interrupted gently. "You just told me you have savings and investments. You can afford a lawyer. The question is whether you can afford not to have one." She was right. I'd spent so many years being careful, with money being the responsible one, that I'd forgotten I had the right to spend it protecting myself. "There's something else," I said quietly. "Robert left letters, one for each of the children to be given to them after my death, but he also left one for me, telling me about provisions he made that they don't know about." "What kind of provisions?" "Trust funds for the grandchildren's education. A clause that revokes their inheritance if they try to have me declared incompetent or force me from my home. He was protecting me even from our own children." Linda smiled sadly. "He knew them better than you wanted to admit." "I think you're right." I stood, tucking the papers back into my folder. "Linda, will you go with me to see the lawyer?" "Of course. When?" "Today, if possible. I have a feeling I don't have much time before they make their move." As we prepared to leave, Linda asked one more question. "Evelyn, what do you want to happen? What's your ideal outcome?" I thought about it carefully. I want them to see me as a person, not a problem to be managed. I want respect, not just duty visits. And I want them to understand that their actions have consequences. And if they can't give you that. I looked out Linda's window at my house across the street, at the home I'd built and maintained and loved for decades. Then they'll learn that some battles aren't worth fighting, especially when the other side holds all the cards. For the first time in years, I felt something I'd almost forgotten. The power that comes from knowing your own worth. "Mrs. Carter, I have to say, this is one of the most comprehensive cases of financial manipulation I've seen in a family setting." Mr. Harrison leaned back in his leather chair, my documents spread across his mahogany desk. "Is it really that bad?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Attempting to use your property as collateral without your knowledge is fraud. Using your credit card without permission is theft. And planning to sell your home while misleading you about ownership." He shook his head. "These aren't gray areas, Mrs. Carter. These are clear legal violations." Linda squeezed my hand supportively. "What are Evelyn's options?" "Several. We could file criminal charges, pursue civil litigation, or—" Mr. Harrison paused, studying my face. "We could prepare a comprehensive response that makes your position crystal clear without involving the courts, at least initially." "What would that look like?" I asked. "First, we secure all your assets, change passwords, add alerts to your accounts, revoke any authorizations your children might have. Second, we prepare documentation showing exactly what they've done and what the legal consequences could be. Third, we give them one chance to change their behavior before we take formal action. And if they don't change, then we have everything ready to pursue full legal remedies." He pulled out a yellow legal pad. "Mrs. Carter, I need you to understand something. Your children are adults who have made choices that could result in serious criminal charges. The fact that they're family doesn't change that." I felt a chill run through me. "I don't want to destroy my family." "You're not destroying anything," Linda said firmly. "They're the ones who chose this path." Mr. Harrison nodded. "Your job isn't to enable their bad behavior. Your job is to protect yourself and give them the opportunity to make better choices. Over the next 2 hours, we went through everything systematically. Mr. Harrison took copies of all my documents, made notes about each incident, and outlined a strategy. "I'll have letters prepared for each of your children by tomorrow," he said. "They'll detail what we know, what the potential legal consequences are, and what they need to do to resolve this without court involvement." "What do they need to do?" I asked. "Stop all unauthorized use of your accounts immediately. Repay the money they've taken. Most importantly, abandon any plans to manipulate you regarding your home or living situation." He met my eyes. "Mrs. Carter, you hold all the power here. Don't let them convince you otherwise." That evening, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of tea and my phone, knowing I needed to make some calls. But first, I wanted to talk to the one family member who'd shown me genuine kindness. Emily answered David's phone on the 3rd ring. "Hi, Grandma!" "Hello, sweetheart. Are you back from your ski trip?" "Yeah, we got home this afternoon. Mom made me unpack right away." She lowered her voice. "Grandma, are you okay? You seemed sad when you brought my sweater. This child's emotional intelligence never ceased to amaze me." "I'm doing better now, honey. But I wanted to ask you something. How would you feel if I made some changes around here?" "What kind of changes?" "Well, what if the next time everyone comes over things were different? What if I didn't do all the cooking and cleaning by myself?" Emily was quiet for a moment. "Would that make you happier?" "I think it would." "Then I think it's a good idea. Dad says happy people make better choices. Out of the mouths of babes." "You're absolutely right, Emily." "Grandma, can I help?" "You with the changes?" "I'm good at organizing things." "I would love your help, sweetheart." After we hung up, I felt fortified. If a 10-year-old could understand that I deserved to be happy, surely her parents could learn the same lesson. My next call was to my bank. "I'd like to review all the authorized users on my accounts," I told the customer service representative. It took an hour, but by the end I'd removed David, Rebecca, and Michael from all my accounts. I changed my passwords, set up fraud alerts, and requested new cards. It felt both liberating and terrifying. Finally, I called each of my children. "Mom, what's up?" David answered on the 1st ring. "I wanted to let you know that I'm having some family meetings over the next few days. I'd like you to come by tomorrow evening around 7. Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine. We just need to talk about some things." "What kind of things?" "We'll discuss it tomorrow." I kept my voice calm and level. "Just you, please, not Sarah." "Mom, that's kind of weird. Can't you just tell me now?" "Tomorrow, David, 7 o'clock. I made similar calls to Rebecca and Michael, scheduling them for the following 2 evenings. Each of them questioned me, pressed for details, but I held firm. "We'll talk when you get here," I repeated to each of them. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was doing the right thing. Part of me wanted to call Mr. Harrison and cancel everything, to go back to the way things were. But then I remembered Sarah's comment about the dry turkey, David's phone conversation about my house, Rebecca's attempt to use my property as collateral. I remembered years of being taken for granted, dismissed and treated like hired help. No, I was done being the family doormat. Tomorrow my children would learn that their mother was not the powerless old woman they thought they knew. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. David arrived at exactly 7 o'clock, which surprised me. Punctuality had never been his strong suit. "Hey, Mom," he said, giving me a perfunctory hug. "So what's this mysterious meeting about? Sit down, dear. I gestured to the living room, where I'd arranged 2 chairs facing each other. Would you like coffee? I'm good. He settled into the chair, checking his phone. Sarah's got dinner waiting, so if we could make this quick. David put the phone away. Something in my tone made him look up. Mom? Put it away. This conversation requires your full attention. He reluctantly slipped the phone into his pocket. Okay, what's going on? You're acting strange. I took a deep breath and pulled out the folder I'd prepared. David, how long have you been taking money from your business account for personal use? The color drained from his face. What are you talking about? $30,000 over 2 years. I have the statements. I opened the folder and showed him the highlighted entries. I co-signed your original business loan, remember? I get copies of everything. Mom, I can explain. I'm sure you can. But first, I need you to understand something. I leaned forward, meeting his eyes. I know about the house appraisal you mentioned on the phone yesterday. I know about your plans to move me to assisted living. I know you've been making decisions about my life without involving me. David's mouth opened and closed like a fish. You were listening to my phone calls. You were standing in someone else's kitchen making plans to sell someone else's house. Did you expect privacy? Mom, it's not like that. We're worried about you. Stop! I held up my hand. David, whose name is on the deed to this house? Well, yours and Dad's? No, just mine. Dad had it changed 15 years ago. I pulled out a copy of the deed and set it on the coffee table between us. This house belongs to me. Only me. You cannot sell it, appraise it, or make any decisions about it without my consent. He stared at the document like it might bite him. I don't understand. It's very simple. You've been operating under false assumptions. This house is mine. My finances are my business. My living situation is my choice. I pulled out another document. This is a letter from my attorney detailing what you've done that could be considered a financial fraud. Your attorney? David's voice cracked. Mom, what's happening here? What's happening is that I'm tired of being treated like a problem to be managed instead of a person to be respected. I kept my voice calm, though my heart was racing. You have choices to make, David. What kind of choices? You can stop taking money from your business account for personal use. You can abandon any plans regarding my house or living situation. You can start treating me like an adult who's capable of making her own decisions. I paused. Or you can face the legal consequences of what you've been doing. David leaned back in his chair, running his hands through his hair. Mom, I never meant to hurt you. We genuinely thought we were helping. By lying to me? By making plans behind my back? By treating me like I'm incompetent? We don't think you're incompetent. Then why didn't you ask me what I wanted instead of deciding for me? He had no answer for that. David, I love you. You're my son, and that will never change. But the way you've been treating me has to change. What do you want me to do? I want you to repay the money you've taken from your business. I want you to stop making assumptions about my capabilities. Most importantly, I want you to start seeing me as your mother, who deserves respect, not as a burden to be managed. We sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, David spoke. How long have you known? About the money, I mean. A while. I kept hoping you'd tell me yourself, that you'd ask for help instead of just taking it. I was embarrassed. The business has been struggling, and Sarah's been pushing me to provide more for the family. He trailed off. That's not an excuse, is it? No, it's not. Mom, I'm sorry. I really am. I never wanted you to feel disrespected. Then don't disrespect me. He nodded slowly. What happens now? Now you go home and think about what kind of relationship you want to have with me going forward. One based on honesty and mutual respect, or one where lawyers handle our communication. David stood up, looking older than when he'd arrived. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why didn't you ever tell us about your financial situation? We had no idea you were so secure. I considered my answer carefully. Because I was afraid that if you knew I didn't need you, you'd stop coming around. Mom. His voice was soft with understanding. We don't visit you because you need us. We visit because we love you. Do you? Because lately, it's felt more like obligation than love. He was quiet for a long moment. I need to do better. Yes, you do. After David left, I sat alone in my living room, my hands shaking slightly from adrenaline. I'd done it. I'd confronted my eldest son and laid out the truth. Tomorrow would bring Rebecca's turn, then Michael's. But tonight, I allowed myself to feel something I hadn't experienced in years, the satisfaction of standing up for myself. My phone buzzed with a text from Emily. Dad seems upset. Are you okay, Grandma? I smiled and typed back, I'm better than okay, sweetheart. I'm proud of myself. And for the first time in a very long time, that was absolutely true. Rebecca arrived the next evening with fire in her eyes. What did you say to David? She demanded before she'd even sat down. He's been weird all day. And Sarah called me crying about some lawyer. Hello, Rebecca. Please sit down. Mom, what's going on? David said you accused him of stealing money? I didn't accuse him of anything. I presented him with facts. I opened my folder, pulling out a different set of documents. Let's talk about your attempt to use my house as collateral for a business loan. Rebecca's defiant expression faltered. How did you? The bank called me. Apparently, you can't use someone else's property as collateral without their signature. I handed her the loan application copy. Care to explain this? She stared at the papers, her face cycling through several emotions. Mom, I can explain. I'm listening. The business opportunity was time-sensitive. I knew you'd want to help if you understood, but I couldn't reach you that day. And I thought... She trailed off. You thought you'd commit fraud and ask for forgiveness later. It's not fraud. It's family helping family. Without consent, it's fraud. I kept my voice level. Rebecca, you tried to put my home at risk for your business venture without even telling me. The loan didn't go through anyway. That's not the point. The point is that you felt entitled to risk my security for your opportunity. Rebecca slumped in her chair. I was desperate, Mom. Tom's been out of work for 6 months, and we're behind on everything. I thought the business could save us. Why didn't you ask me for help? Because, she exploded. Because you've spent my whole life being so careful with money, so worried about every penny. I didn't think you'd understand taking a business risk. Her words stung because they held a grain of truth. I had been careful, cautious. But that caution had protected us when Robert died, had kept this house, had secured my independence. Rebecca, you're right. I am careful with money. Do you know why? She shook her head. Because being careful allowed me to pay off this house when your father died. Being careful means I have savings and investments that ensure I'll never be a burden to you children. Being careful gave me the freedom to help when you really need it, if you'd asked. You have savings? Rebecca looked stunned. Did you think I lived on Social Security alone? We never talked about it. No, we didn't. Because every time money came up, you children seemed so stressed about your own situations that I didn't want to add to your worries. Rebecca was quiet for a long moment. How much do you know about my situation? I know Tom's been unemployed. I know you're 3 months behind on your mortgage. I know you maxed out your credit cards trying to keep the business afloat before it failed. How could you possibly know all that? I pulled out another document. You used me as a reference on several applications. The company's called to verify. Oh, God. Rebecca buried her face in her hands. Mom, I'm so sorry. Sorry for lying to me. Or sorry you got caught. Both. Neither. I don't know. She looked up, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry for being so desperate that I stopped seeing you as my mother and started seeing you as a resource. That admission hit harder than any anger could have. Rebecca. No, let me say this. You've always been the one we could count on. When we needed money for college, you worked extra shifts. When I got divorced the first time, you took me and Emily in for 6 months. When Michael crashed, his car, you paid for repairs. She wiped her eyes. We got used to you fixing our problems. I wanted to help my children. But we never grew up, did we? We kept coming to Mommy to fix things instead of learning to handle them ourselves. The conversation was taking a turn I hadn't expected. Rebecca's anger had dissolved into something more honest and painful. What do you want to do now? I asked quietly. I want to fix this. Really fix it. Not just apologize and go back to the same patterns. She sat up straighter. Mom, will you help me learn to handle my finances properly? Not by giving me money, but by teaching me what you know? Are you serious about that? Yes. I'm tired of being broke and desperate and making terrible decisions because of it. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or false promises. Instead, I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Genuine humility. Rebecca, learning to manage money means making hard choices. It means saying no to things you want. It means planning for the future instead of just surviving day to day. I know. It also means being completely honest with me about your situation. No hiding debts. No surprise crises. I understand. I pulled out a financial planning workbook I'd picked up that morning. We'll start with this. But first, you need to pay back the money you took without permission. What money? I showed her the credit card statements. Small purchases, but they add up. $237 over the past 3 months. Rebecca stared at the highlighted charges. I didn't think you'd notice. I notice everything, Rebecca. I just didn't say anything. Why not? Because I thought if I ignored it, it would stop. I thought you'd figure out it was wrong on your own. I closed the folder. I was enabling you by staying silent. So what happens now? Now you pay it back, all of it, and we work together to make sure you never feel desperate enough to steal from family again. Rebecca nodded, wiping her eyes again. Mom, can I ask you something? Of course. Why now? Why are you confronting all of us now? I thought about my answer carefully. Because I realized that loving you doesn't mean letting you treat me poorly. Because I'm 65, not 95, and I refuse to spend my remaining years being invisible in my own family. We don't think you're invisible. Then why do you make plans for my life without including me? She had no answer for that. Rebecca, I love you. I will always love you. But respect isn't optional anymore. Either you treat me like the competent, adult I am, or we'll have a very different kind of relationship going forward. What does that mean? It means I won't be available to solve crises that could have been prevented by better planning. It means I won't enable financial irresponsibility by cleaning up messes. And it means if you lie to me or manipulate me, there will be consequences. Rebecca sat quietly for several minutes, processing everything I'd said. Mom, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest. Okay. Do you still want to be part of our lives? Really want to, not just feel obligated? The question surprised me with its directness. Yes, I do. But I want to be part of your lives as myself, not as the woman who fixes everything and asks for nothing in return. What would that look like? It would look like you calling to ask how I'm doing, not just when you need something. It would look like including me in decisions that affect me. It would look like treating me like someone whose opinions and feelings matter. And if we can't do that, I met her eyes steadily. Then you'll learn that some people are only worth knowing when they're useful to you, and I won't be useful anymore. After Rebecca left, I felt emotionally drained but oddly hopeful. Unlike David's defensive anger, Rebecca had shown genuine remorse and a willingness to change. Maybe this family could be salvaged after all. My phone buzzed with a text from David. Talk to Sarah. We want to make this right. Can we meet this weekend to discuss how? I smiled and typed back, Saturday at 2. Come alone. Progress was slow, but it was still progress. Tomorrow would bring Michael's turn, and then we'd see if this family was worth saving. Michael arrived 20 minutes late on Thursday evening, which was actually early for him. Sorry, Mom. Traffic was crazy. He kissed my cheek and flopped onto the couch. So David and Rebecca said you're mad about something. I'm not mad, Michael. I'm disappointed. Okay. What did I do now? I pulled out his file, which was thinner than his siblings, but no less concerning. Let's start with the credit card charges. What credit card charges? I handed him the statements with his purchases highlighted. My credit card. The one you used to order Christmas presents last year. You kept the information. Michael scanned the list, his face growing red. Mom, these are tiny amounts, like $20 here and there. Without permission. I was going to pay you back. When? It's been 4 months, Michael. He shifted uncomfortably. I've been meaning to bring it up. You've been meaning to tell me you've been using my credit card without permission? It sounds worse when you put it like that. How should it sound? Michael was quiet for a moment. Mom, I'm really struggling right now. Jennifer left. I'm behind on rent, and work has been slow. I didn't know who else to ask for help. Of all my children, Michael had always been the most honest about his struggles. He'd never been particularly ambitious or successful, but he'd also never been malicious. Unlike his siblings, his transgression felt more like desperation than entitlement. Michael, why didn't you just ask me for help? Because I'm 38 years old. The words burst out of him. Because I should be able to handle my own problems by now. Because every family gathering, David talks about his business and Rebecca talks about her plans. And I'm still the screw-up little brother who can't get his life together. This was new territory. I'd never heard Michael express these feelings before. Is that how you see yourself? As a screw-up? Isn't that how everyone sees me? He laughed bitterly. David's the successful businessman. Rebecca's the entrepreneur. And I'm the guy who delivers furniture and can't even keep a girlfriend. Michael, Delivering furniture is honest work. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing particularly right with it either. I studied my youngest child, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. While I'd been worried about David's financial manipulation and Rebecca's desperation, I'd missed Michael's quiet self-loathing. Michael, do you know what I see when I look at you? The family disappointment. I see the son who visited me every week after your father died even when your siblings were too busy. I see the man who fixed my leaky faucet and painted my porch without being asked. I see someone who's kind and reliable and genuinely caring. But not successful. What does successful mean to you? He shrugged. Making good money, having a nice house, being someone people respect. Do you respect David? The question seemed to surprise him. He's successful. That's not what I asked. Michael thought about it. Honestly, not really. He's always trying to prove he's the smartest person in the room, and he treats Sarah like garbage half the time. And Rebecca? She's smart, but she makes terrible decisions and then expects everyone else to fix them. But you respect them because they make more money than you. I guess when you put it like that, it sounds stupid. Michael, success isn't just about money. It's about being someone you can be proud of, someone who treats others well, someone who contributes something positive to the world. I deliver furniture, Mom. I'm not exactly changing the world. You help families get the things they need for their homes. You work with your hands, you're dependable, and your customers trust you. I leaned forward. Do you know how many people can say that about their work? Michael was quiet, processing this. But that doesn't excuse taking money without permission, I continued. I know. I'm sorry, Mom. I really am. Sorry enough to pay it back? Yes. It might take a few weeks, but I'll pay every penny. And sorry enough to ask for help when you need it, instead of just taking it? He nodded. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why are you doing this now, confronting all of us at once? I told him about overhearing David's phone call, about discovering the various ways my children had been taking advantage of me, about feeling invisible in my own family. Mom, I never thought of you as invisible. Really? When's the last time you asked me about my day, my interests, my plans? Michael considered this. Honestly, I don't remember. You call when you need something fixed or when you're lonely. You visit when David and Rebecca are here. But when's the last time we just talked? I don't know. Neither do I. We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Finally, Michael spoke. Mom, I think I've been so wrapped up in feeling like a failure that I forgot other people might have problems too. I don't have problems, Michael. I have a life, a full, complex life with interests and concerns and dreams, just like anyone else. What kind of dreams? The question caught me off guard. When was the last time anyone had asked me about my dreams? I'd like to travel. I've always wanted to see Ireland, where your grandfather's family came from. I'd like to take some art classes. I used to paint before you children were born. You painted? I was quite good, actually. I sold a few pieces at local galleries. I never knew that. There's a lot you don't know about me, Michael, because no one ever asks. I'm asking now. I smiled at him. Now we're getting somewhere. By the time Michael left, I felt like I'd reconnected with my youngest child in a way that hadn't happened in years. Unlike his siblings, his issues weren't rooted in entitlement, but in insecurity and pain. Mom? he said at the door. I'm going to do better, not just with the money thing, but with seeing you as a person instead of just Mom. I'd like that very much. After he left, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of tea, reflecting on the past 3 days. Each of my children had reacted differently to being confronted with their behavior. David with defensive anger, Rebecca with desperate justification, and Michael with honest shame. But all 3 had shown glimmers of understanding, moments where they seemed to see me as something other than the background figure in their lives. It was a start. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Linda. How did it go tonight? Better than expected. I told her about my conversation with Michael. So what's next? I'm not sure. I've said what needed to be said. Now I wait to see if they meant what they said about changing. And if they didn't? I looked around my kitchen, at the home I'd fought to keep, at the life I was finally learning to claim as my own. Then I'll know I tried, and I'll move forward with people who do see my worth. For the first time in years, that didn't seem like a terrible possibility. Saturday afternoon brought David and Sarah to my door, both looking nervous. Mom, we need to talk, David said as I let them in. Actually, David, I asked you to come alone. Sarah wanted to be here. This affects her too. I looked at Sarah, who at least had the grace to appear uncomfortable. Does it? How exactly does my relationship with my son affect you, Sarah? I'm his wife. We're partners. What impacts him impacts me. I see. Well then, both of you sit down. We arranged ourselves in the living room, the tension thick as fog. David, have you thought about what we discussed? Yes, and I want to make things right. But Sarah has some concerns. I turned to Sarah. What concerns? Sarah straightened her shoulders. Evelyn, I think there's been a misunderstanding. David wasn't trying to hurt you. We were genuinely worried about you living alone in this big house. Did you ask me if I was worried about living alone? Well, no, but did you ask me if I wanted to move? We thought it was obvious that someone your age would want to downsize. Based on what evidence? Sarah floundered. Based on common sense. Sarah, I'm 65, not 95. I'm in good health. I maintain this house perfectly well, and I have the financial means to continue doing so. What exactly made you think I needed to be managed? Evelyn, that's not fair. We weren't trying to manage you. I pulled out the folder that had become my constant companion. David, read this conversation transcript out loud. What is this? It's from your phone call at your house last week, the one I overheard while I was delivering your groceries. David's face went white as he read his own words about house appraisals and assisted living. You were planning to sell my house without my consent, I said calmly. How is that not managing me? Mom, we weren't going to force you. You weren't going to give me a choice either. Sarah leaned forward. Evelyn, you have to understand our position. We're thinking about the future. What happens if you fall? What happens if you get sick? We'll be the ones responsible for taking care of you. No, you won't. The words hung in the air like a challenge. What do you mean? David asked. I mean, I have long-term care insurance. I have a comprehensive health care directive. I have financial resources to handle any situation that might arise. I met both their eyes. I don't need you to take care of me. Sarah's mouth dropped open. You have long-term care insurance? I've had it for 10 years. Why didn't you tell us? Because it wasn't your business. Just like my finances aren't your business. Just like my living situation isn't your business. David ran his hands through his hair. Mom, We had no idea you were so prepared. Of course you didn't, because you never asked. You just assumed I was a helpless old woman who needed her children to make decisions for her. That's not true, Sarah protested. Isn't it? Sarah, in the 5 years you've been married to my son, how many times have you asked me about my life, my interests, my plans? Sarah was silent. I'll save you the trouble of counting. 0. You've never once asked me about anything other than what I could do for your family. That's not intentional. Intent doesn't matter. Impact does. David leaned forward. Mom, what do you want from us? I want you to see me as a complete person, not just as mom or grandma or the woman who fixes problems. I want you to include me in decisions that affect me. I want you to ask before you assume. And if we can't do that... Sarah's voice was cold. Then our relationship will be very different going forward. Are you threatening us? I'm explaining consequences. I kept my voice level. Sarah, you seem to think this is a negotiation. It's not. I'm telling you how things are going to be. You can't just cut us out of your life. Watch me. The words came out harsher than I'd intended, but I didn't take them back. David looked stricken. Mom, please, we love you. Then act like it. How? Tell us specifically what you want us to do. I pulled out a handwritten list I'd prepared. Stop making assumptions about my capabilities. Stop making plans that affect me without including me. Stop treating my home like it's your inheritance to manage. Start asking me about my life, my thoughts, my plans. Start seeing me as someone whose opinions matter. And if we do all that, Sarah asked, then we might salvage this family. And if we don't? I met her eyes steadily. Then you'll learn that some bridges once burned can't be rebuilt. The room fell silent. David stared at his hands, Sarah stared at me, and I stared back unflinchingly. Finally, David spoke. Mom, I need to ask you something, and I want a completely honest answer. Okay. Do you still want us in your life? Really want us? Not just feel obligated? The question was so similar to Rebecca's that it made me pause. All 3 of my children were asking the same thing. Did I actually love them? Or was I just going through the motions? David, I will always love you. You're my son. But love isn't enough anymore. I need respect. I need to be seen. I need to matter. You do matter. Then prove it. David and Sarah exchanged a long look. Some silent communication passed between them. We'll do better, David said finally. Will you? Or will you go back to your old patterns once this uncomfortable conversation is over? We'll do better, he repeated, and this time there was conviction in his voice. Sarah nodded reluctantly. I owe you an apology, Evelyn. I have treated you more like a service provider than a family member. It wasn't the warmest apology I'd ever received, but it was honest. Apologies are nice, I said. Changed behavior is better. After they left, I felt emotionally exhausted, but cautiously optimistic. The hardest conversations were behind me now. The question was whether my children would follow through on their promises or revert to old patterns once the initial shock wore off. Time would tell. But for the first time in years, I felt like I had a voice in my own family, and that was worth fighting for. 3 weeks passed before I saw any of my children again. The silence was both peaceful and unsettling. I'd grown so used to constant requests and demands that their absence felt strange. Linda checked on me daily, bringing coffee and conversation. Any word from the kids? she asked on a Tuesday morning. David texted yesterday asking if I needed anything from the store. I told him no, but thanked him for asking. That's progress. Maybe. Or maybe he's just being polite until things blow over. You'll know the difference when you see it. Linda was right. I would know. The first real test came on a Thursday evening when my phone rang with Rebecca's number. Hi, Mom. I wanted to ask you something. Okay. Tom got a job offer. It's good money, but it's in Phoenix. We're trying to decide whether to take it. I waited for the request for money or advice or a solution to some problem the move would create. Instead, Rebecca continued. I wanted to know what you thought. Not what we should do, just what you thought about it. You want my opinion? Yes. You raised 3 kids. You've lived in the same community for decades. I value your perspective. I nearly dropped the phone. When was the last time one of my children had asked for my perspective rather than my help? Rebecca, what's most important to you right now? Stability or opportunity? I think stability. We've been scrambling for so long, I'm tired of uncertainty. Then that's your answer. A steady job in a new place sounds like exactly what your family needs. What about leaving you here alone? I'm not alone. I have friends, community, a life here. And Phoenix isn't on Mars. You can visit, and I can visit you. You'd really be okay with us moving? Honey, I want you to make the decision that's best for your family. That's what parents want for their children. We talked for another 20 minutes about the logistics of moving, about Emily's concerns about changing schools, about how they'd handle Tom starting a new job. It was the first real conversation we'd had in years. Mom? Rebecca said before hanging up. Yes. Thank you for treating me like an adult who can make her own decisions. After we hung up, I sat smiling in my kitchen. This was what I'd been missing. Being consulted, valued, treated like someone whose thoughts mattered. 2 days later, Michael appeared at my door with a check and a bouquet of flowers. The credit card money, he said, handing me both. Plus interest. And the flowers are just because. Just because what? Just because you're my mom, and I love you, and I realized I never tell you that. I invited him in for coffee, and we ended up talking for 2 hours. He told me about his work, about the customers he enjoyed, about a woman he'd started dating. I told him about the book club I'd joined, about my plans to visit Rebecca in Phoenix, about the painting class I was considering. You should definitely take the art class, he said. I'd love to see your paintings. Would you really? Mom, of course. I want to know about the things that matter to you. It was such a simple statement, but it meant everything. A week later, David called with an invitation that surprised me. Sarah and I are having some friends over for dinner Saturday. Would you like to join us? As a guest or as the help? There was a pause. As my mother, who I'd like my friends to meet properly. What does that mean? It means you sit at the table and enjoy the meal Sarah's cooking. It means we introduce you as the accomplished woman who raised 3 children and ran a household and built a life, not just as David's mom. Sarah's cooking? She insisted, said it was time she learned what you've been doing all these years. I accepted the invitation, curious to see if they meant what they said. Saturday evening found me sitting at David and Sarah's dining table, engaged in conversation with their friends about books, travel, and current events. Sarah had prepared a lovely meal and seemed genuinely interested in including me in the conversation. Mom was telling us about her plans to visit Ireland. David said to the table, She's been researching our family history." "How fascinating," said one of their friends. "Have you discovered anything interesting?" I spent the next 20 minutes sharing what I'd learned about my husband's family, about the small village they'd come from, about the relatives who might still be there. David and Sarah listened as intently as their guests, asking questions I'd never heard from them before. "I had no idea you were interested in genealogy," Sarah said later as we cleared the table together. "There's a lot you don't know about me. I'm realizing that. I'd like to know more, if you're willing to share." It was a small gesture, but it felt significant. As I drove home that night, I reflected on the changes I'd seen in my children over the past month. They were small changes. A phone call asking for my opinion. Flowers, just because. An invitation that treated me as a person rather than a role. But small changes, accumulated over time, could become something bigger. My phone buzzed with a text from Emily. "Grandma, thank you for making everyone happier. I like our family better now." I smiled, thinking about that wise 10-year-old's words. She was right. Our family was happier now, healthier, more honest. It had taken a crisis to get here, but maybe that was how change always happened. Maybe you had to be willing to risk losing something before you could truly appreciate its value. I was still smiling when I pulled into my driveway, looking up at the house that was mine, that had always been mine, that no one could take from me. For the first time in years, I felt truly at home. 6 months later, I stood in my kitchen preparing for Easter dinner. But this time, everything was different. "Grandma, where do you want these flowers?" Emily asked, carrying in a beautiful arrangement. "On the dining room table, sweetheart. They're lovely." "Dad picked them out. He said you mentioned liking daffodils." That David remembered a casual comment I'd made weeks ago felt like a small miracle. The doorbell rang, and Michael appeared with grocery bags and his girlfriend, Janet, whom I'd been hearing about for months. "Mom, this is Janet. Janet, this is my amazing mother I've been telling you about." "Mrs. Carter, it's so wonderful to meet you," Janet said, offering her hand. "Michael talks about you constantly. Good things, I hope. The best things. He's very proud of you." I looked at my youngest son, seeing the contentment in his face that had been missing for so long. He'd gotten promoted to a supervisor position at work and had been taking business classes at night. More importantly, he seemed to have found peace with himself. Rebecca and Tom arrived next, having driven up from Phoenix for the weekend. Rebecca looked healthier than I'd seen her in years. Less frantic, more settled. "Mom, the house looks beautiful," she said, hugging me. "And you look wonderful." "Thank you, dear. How's the new job treating Tom?" "Really well. Steady hours, good benefits, and Phoenix is actually pretty nice once you get used to the heat." "I'm glad." Emily tugged on my sleeve. "Grandma, show Aunt Rebecca your paintings." "You've been painting?" Rebecca asked with genuine interest. "I started taking classes in January. Would you like to see?" I led her to the living room where 3 of my recent works hung on the wall. Watercolor landscapes that had surprised even me with their quality. "Mom, these are incredible. You're really talented." "Thank you. It feels good to create something. Again." David and Sarah arrived last, and I noticed immediately how much more relaxed they both seemed. David had paid back the money he'd taken from his business and had started seeing a financial counselor. Sarah had begun therapy to address what she called her control issues. "Happy Easter, Mom," David said, kissing my cheek. "What can we do to help?" It was such a simple question, but it represented everything that had changed. Instead of expecting to be served, they were offering to serve. Actually, I thought we'd do things differently this year, I announced to the assembled family. Everyone contributes something. Emily and I made the ham. Rebecca brought dessert. Michael and Janet handled the vegetables. David and Sarah, you're in charge of drinks and setting the table. What about you? Sarah asked. What's your job? My job is to enjoy my family. As we worked together in the kitchen, I marveled at how natural it felt. Conversation flowed easily, with people actually listening to each other, instead of just waiting for their turn to talk. Grandma, Emily said as she helped me arrange serving dishes. Remember when you asked me how I'd feel if you made changes? I remember. This is better. Everyone's nicer to each other now. She was right. The family dynamic had shifted fundamentally. Instead of revolving around obligation and expectation, our relationships now felt genuine. During dinner, David raised his glass. I'd like to make a toast. David, no. I started, remembering the Christmas toast that had excluded me. No, Mom, please. Let me say this. He looked around the table. 6 months ago, I almost lost the most important relationship in my life because I was too selfish and stupid to see what was right in front of me. The table grew quiet. Mom, you taught us everything important we know about how to be decent human beings, but somewhere along the way, we forgot to apply those lessons to how we treated you. His voice grew thick. I'm sorry it took almost losing you to remember what you mean to us. Here, here, Michael said, raising his own glass. Rebecca wiped her eyes. Mom, I need to say something too. Moving to Phoenix has been good for our family, but the best part has been the phone calls. Really talking to you, asking your advice, sharing what's happening in our lives. I feel like I have my mother back. You never lost me, I said quietly. I was always here. But we weren't seeing you, Sarah said. I wasn't seeing you. I'm still learning. But I want you to know how much I appreciate the patience you've shown me. Emily, not to be outdone by the adults, stood up. I want to toast Grandma, too. She's the bravest person I know, and she makes the best ham. And she's teaching me to paint, and I love her very much. By the time she finished, there wasn't a dry eye at the table. After dinner, as we sat in the living room sharing stories and actually listening to each other, I felt a contentment I hadn't experienced in years. This was what family was supposed to feel like. Connected, respectful, caring. Linda stopped by with Easter cookies, and instead of being treated like an outsider, she was welcomed into the conversation like the family friend she'd always been. Evelyn, you look positively radiant, she whispered to me as she prepared to leave. I feel radiant, I whispered back. Thank you for helping me find my voice. You always had your voice, honey. You just needed to remember how to use it. As the evening wound down, each of my children made a point of spending individual time with me. David talked about his business plans and asked for my thoughts on a new venture. Rebecca showed me pictures from Phoenix and invited me to visit. Next month, Michael shared his excitement about a possible promotion and asked if I'd like to meet Janet's parents. They're having a barbecue next weekend, he said. Janet's been bragging about you so much. Her mom specifically asked if you'd come. She's been bragging about me? Mom, you're amazing. Why wouldn't she brag about you? It was such a foreign concept, someone my age being worth bragging about. But I was learning to accept these new perspectives on my worth. After everyone left, I sat alone in my clean kitchen. They'd insisted on doing all the dishes. Reflecting on the day My phone buzzed with texts from each of my children, thanking me for the meal and telling me they loved me. But it was Emily's text that made me smile the biggest. "Grandma, today felt like what Easter is supposed to feel like we're celebrating something beautiful." She was right. We were celebrating something beautiful. The resurrection of our family, the restoration of respect and love, the rebirth of relationships that had nearly been lost to assumptions and neglect. I walked through my house, turning off lights and looking at the photos on the walls. The same pictures were there, but they meant something different now. They weren't just memories of obligation and duty. They were evidence of love, growth, and the possibility that people could change when they chose to see clearly. In my bedroom, I opened the jewelry box where I kept Robert's last letter to me, the one I'd never shown the children. His words seemed especially relevant tonight. "My darling Evelyn, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and you're facing the world without me. Don't let our children take advantage of your generous heart. You are worth so much more than the service you provide others. Demand the respect you deserve. Fight for the love you've earned. You are not just a mother or a wife. You are a complete, wonderful, valuable person in your own right. Never forget that." I'd forgotten for a while, but I remembered now. As I prepared for bed, I felt grateful for the crisis that had forced this change. Without it, I might have continued being invisible in my own life, unappreciated in my own family, taken for granted by the people I loved most. Now, at 65, I was finally living as myself, not just as someone's mother or grandmother or helper, but as Evelyn Carter, a woman with her own dreams, opinions, and value. It had taken courage to demand respect. It had taken strength to risk losing my family in order to save it. But it had been worth every difficult conversation, every moment of uncertainty, every leap of faith. I was no longer invisible. I was seen, valued, and loved for who I truly was. And that, I thought as I drifted off to sleep, was exactly how it should be.